What's up, fuckers? Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the GM Studio. You know that podcast about tabletop RPGs and all of the tabletop RPG hobby? Yeah, it's one. And I'm your host, Matt.
I am David.
And for this week, we had our kind of minor session 0. Mostly just character creation, kind of doing a little bit of connections at the end for Barbarians of Lemuria. I'm excited that the other guys are excited to try it, because ever since I looked at the book, I was kind of into this. I really want to see how they feel about this sort of system. Because this is kind of like, this system is one of my favorites because it gives you options to create goddamn near anything you want. You're not set in stone to anything. If you choose, I want the thief class, you're not just stuck to that stuff. You can really put it together how you want it to work.
Well, it's not even... Speaking of which, we were talking last night, and I ordered the book, and it's here already.
Holy shit! When did you order it?
Like, when we were, like, at the end of our session 0 last night.
Yeah, last night?
Remember when I was like, oh, it's like $80, and then I was like, oh, no, it's not. It's only like $30. I was like, yeah, I'll just order it. And then I was like, I went on and I was like, wait, I did order that last night, right? Didn't I? And then it was here. It was like, it got here like 3 o'clock today. I was like, holy shit.
Who's the publisher?
Yeah,
If they have one. I know they did the Kickstart for it.
Lotospheric.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yeah, it's not full color though. It's just just black and white. But
still, hey, for $30 with that much, it has art in it. First of all,
yeah,
it's a colored cover. The layout is not bad. The index is pretty good.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, whatever Lotus Pharaoh or whatever it was, well done, dude. Getting your shit out there really quick.
It feels like a fairly small operation that he kind of kickstarted it or whatever. But I was I was expecting a little more. It seemed like a lot of it, we were just kind of sitting here quietly for a while, and you guys were making your characters, and so we just started bullshitting about other stuff, because I was like, oh, like, do you want to talk about the game? And then, like, I thought you guys would have questions, maybe.
Well, yeah, I expected the other two to have a lot more questions. I was pretty up to speed with it, so I was going to be your backup for anything that you needed. But yeah, I was expecting way more questions from the two of them.
Yeah, well, I think it helps too that I was like, look, I'm not really gonna fuck around with the magic mechanic just yet. Again, I know everybody loves magic, but I just don't. It just feels like a thing that PC shouldn't have access to in a sword and sorcery game. And then I was like, well, I kind of glanced what's the word I'm looking for? Like, grand battles or whatever, like siege battle mechanics and the ship-to-ship battles. But again, I don't anticipate leveraging those just yet. Not that they don't have a place in the game, but the initial sagas, I feel, should be more boots on the ground, adventuring, kind of, short 2-3 sessions of 3-act structure kind of stuff. And so I didn't get really in the weeds about that, and everybody seemed like they had a pretty good idea. I will say though, I am like, I wish I would have known that you guys were all intending to make your characters, because I guess Cody kind of used one. I made like 5 characters, and I had like another 6th character concept, but then you guys were like, no, we'll just do it. It's easy enough. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine then.
It was pretty easy. One thing that maybe it's just at the beginning, because I haven't looked into progression, leveling up and all that. And it is kind of, when you're reading it, it kind of fucks with your head. So when you get down, you get 1 free boon,
Hmm.
but then you can take a second boon if you take a flaw from your origin,
Correct.
and the boon has to be from your origin as well, or does it have to be from your
No,
career?
it doesn't have to be, but it can be from either your origin or your career. So you're right. You
Mm,
get one free boon from your origin, like you're a plains dweller or
yeah.
whatever. You're from the Fire Coast or whatever. And there's a list of boons, and you can choose from those boons. Then, if you want to take a second one, you either have to sacrifice a hero point, like a permanent hero point. So instead of having 5 starting hero points, you would have 4. Or you take a flaw from your origin.
Hmm.
And then the boon that you get can be from any career. I think it's any career you have a rank in.
Okay.
It, I think it's any career you have a rank in. I didn't, for a minute, I was thinking it was your first career, like your
Mm,
top career, but I think it's any career you have a rank in, which is admittedly a pretty wide swath because you get 4 careers.
hmm.
And so if you really wanted to position yourself for the widest selection of boons, you would just put one rank in each of them. I'm pretty sure you have to have a rank in it though. Then you can take a third boon if you take a second flaw, and the second flaw, I believe, has to be from your origin or your career, but the boon can be from just the master list. So it's almost like this kind of playing catch up thing. So that
Mm,
is a little difficult to understand. And when you really parse it with like your origins, your 4 careers, and or any careers you have ranks in, and you stack up all those lists of boons and flaws, it's really pretty unlikely that you would have selected a certain origin and these careers that didn't give you access to a boon that you would be interested in already, right? It's like
mm.
because they just kind of fall into natural character concepts. Like you're not likely to choose, you know, beggar, minstrel, thief, or merchant thief, and then be like, hey, I really want to have the thick-skinned boon, right? It's
Yeah.
like, well, that seems weird, but okay, you if you want to do that, you'd have to take a third one, or you could burn another hero point. So
Mm,
that was probably the only aspect that was a little difficult to understand, especially because you have to like jump back and forth between the lists of your career and the lists of your
yeah.
origin and like the boons, and it's all just kind of a little bit of back and forth. But
For those of out there that didn't listen to us kind of talk about Barbarians of Lemure uh, last week, uh, this is a game that David found out in the nethers of the TTRPG space
hmm.
that I have never heard of. I never heard of this game, which is kind of weird because of all the Japanese role playing games I've been looking into recently. This one fits in there very perfectly. Uh, it's a newer game. This is the Mythic Edition, which is the third one that they put out, if I remember correctly.
Maybe, yeah.
They've always been sword and sorcery based, at least from what I can see. Maybe their first one that they put out was not as sword and sorcery as it is now, because I've seen
Mm.
some people say that they turned more sword and sorcery throughout the years. Uh, but like I was saying, this game, and oh shit, I never even saw where like the developer is from. I don't even know if
The,
you saw that.
the developer?
Yeah, the person that
Like,
wrote
what
the
do you mean?
game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his name is like Simon Washburn
Okay.
is the main guy, writing in it anyway, and so it sounds American to me, but
Mm.
no, it actually says translated from French.
Oh, really?
So I
Okay.
think it was written in French. So I think he's a Frenchman,
Ooh, all
but
right.
but yeah, he obviously likes, all the pulpy Lynn Carter,
Mm-hmm.
C.L. Moore, Michael Moorcock, Robert E. Howard, Fritz Lieber. Like it's just he cites them all in here as his influences.
Mm.
John Jakes, the Brack the Barbarian or fun, So yeah, it's like somewhere between Conan and Thundar and Fafhrd and Grey Mouser. It's
Mm-hmm.
like in that world and is I believe actually Lemura is actually a Lynn Carter like world, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. I believe Lynn Carter's a guy, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
um wrote something of Lemura, like one of his main titular characters is someone of Lemura, like it's Conan of Samaria or whatever. And
Right.
um, so I think that's where he pulled that from.
Okay.
Probably because it's not copyrighted or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Uh, but like I was saying, it's very much akin to a lot of the Japanese TRPGs I've been looking at. Is it's a 2d6 system where 2d6 plus modifier. If it's for a skill, it's usually a career, which you could also call a class or a job.
mhm,
Uh, and Japanese TRPGs are big fans of this, of just what it's technically multi-classing, but you
mhm,
just take ranks or levels of different classes slash jobs slash careers, and because these things are what's going to become your skills
mhm,
down the line, as well as giving you other options into usually other feats and things that you can do. Luckily, with this game, you don't really have to have you don't have to set a lot of preliminaries to do boons and flaws. To just kind of open to everybody. But it seems to be a really cool fucking game. Like I said, 2d6 plus modifier game. I do love a good soak roll where armor soaks
mhm.
damage. I'm
Me
much
too.
I really like that. There is some meta currencies in there. Some of them are for the magic, the priest, and alchemist.
Alchemist and the Magician.
Right. Like I was saying, majority is from magic. But the hero points is your major one, while lifeblood is your hit points.
Hmm.
There's only 4 attributes as well as 4 other modified things,
Combat skills.
combat skills. Yeah,
Yep.
initiative, defense, melee, and ranged. Very simple game. And again, I do love just a target number, a static target number that is
Hmm.
affected by other things. Where in this game, there are bonus die and what do they call the one where it's not a bonus die? It's a bad
Penalty
die,
die.
penalty
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
Uh, I like it when they use that instead to kind of alter the target number. And of course, you
Mm-hmm.
can just boost up the target number, or it's sometimes easier to just tell the person, hey, -2 to your roll, yada yada, make it a
Hmm.
little bit easier on yourself. I do really like this game. I really want to see it in action. We
Yeah.
had a little, kind of like a little test
Yeah.
combat round with some rabble.
Yeah.
Which do you want to describe what rabble is in the game, Dave?
Yeah, rabble are basically what you would probably used to call minions in previous editions. They're low level throwaway villains that are typically going to be the cultists, the foot soldiers, and they tend to be very easily dispatched, but then they're just sheer numbers. They're
Mm.
and in sword and sorcery fashion, typically what happens is that there'll be, a few heroes and they'll be standing up against like a fucking horde of enemies. And when all of those enemies have, they're always like fleshed out as the PC statistically, uh, in the mechanics, it would be virtually impossible to defeat them. But this game kind of accounts for that and allows you to kind of have, these heroic moments where it's like you guys were fighting what, 18 enemies,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a 6-to-1 ratio. And but because of the way the mechanics work, it just kind of breaks down as they just kind of tack, in groups basically. I like that horde mechanic. I looked up and down for the one from the fucking Conan RPG that they used to have,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like they broke it down by just like a ratio. If you're outnumbered 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1, and then they like broke it down by like, okay, here's your rolls, like your target number successes. You handled it in cinematic fashion, and then it was just like the players just took at the end of the battle, they just took X amount of damage depending on how badly they were
Mm-hmm.
outnumbered, what their rolls were, and like um some other contributing thing. Uh, I really wanted to kind of see that mechanic, but this one kind of gets pretty close to it, which is just allows you to, it's more of an inconvenience than
Mm-hmm.
it is a threat, right? Like you have to wade through these enemies to kind of get to the other things, and so it provides a variety of types of encounters because there are three types of enemies. There are rabble, which are just going to be the most numerous. Then there are what are called toughs, and they're kind of like lieutenants or captains. Like they're tougher than rabble, but they're not as tough as villains. And villains are usually the big bad of whatever saga. They have villain points, like the heroes have hero points that they can use for certain things. They're made to be run kind of like an individual character.
Hold on. You stopped talking just as I went to take a drink. Okay. All right.
Sorry, it
More.
like made it go down the wrong pipe or
Yeah.
something. Like, oh shit, it's my turn to talk.
Well, I thought you were just pausing, to think about what you're gonna say next, and then I looked down and I saw you were taking a drink. I was like, oh fuck. Gotta get back into this. Okay. More on Barbarians of Lemieux much later, as soon as we start getting into it. As I'm very excited. I really want to see where this goes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really interested in the world that David's going to create for this. And I really want to help him out a lot because David has always wanted to play in this sort of setting and has usually gotten either, vetoed or we continue to make it our own and he just goes with it like a nice guy.
Because everybody just loves D&D so much. What really prompted this is I started to make my own RPG, just like to be in this world. And then I was like, I got into this new edition of this game. I downloaded the PDF, and I was like, this is like almost everything that I want, and from everything from the advancement. There's no levels. I like that. It's just you just get advancement points and you use them to purchase things that bolster your character, and it's the there's no experience points per se. It's just you just get. I mean, I guess they are experience points because they're called advancement points, but they're predicated on success in the quest and how you describe what happens. One of the things I like the most about it is that there's just not this emphasis on treasure and the accumulation of treasure. It's like the treasure is a goal. The treasure is just a conduit to advancement. And so the book says, there's great vast amounts of wealth that you should be pouring on the players, right? And it even says in the book, I don't know if you read this part, but it's like just describe these massive hordes of gold and all this stuff when they complete a quest. And if they ask you like how they can count, like if they can count how much is there, it literally just says just laugh at them.
Yeah.
It just says laugh at them. Have they suddenly become accountants? They're
Yeah.
adventurers. There's no way they can take all this treasure with them. They can take some choice pieces, and the whole goal of that is to go back to civilization where people see that they have like a fistful of emeralds and a scepter and stuff, and to piss it all away in an entertaining fashion that increases their reputation because no one was here in this jungle temple when they slayed this two-headed snake, so except the fellow adventurers. So the only way their reputation grows is by people just going like, well, I mean, he did set off into the jungle yesterday with those other two dudes, and he came back with like a 10 sacks full of gold, and now he's just pissing it away
Yeah.
on
He paid
wine and
for
women.
another night in the room. He paid
Yeah.
for food and drink, and now it's all gone.
Yeah, and now it's all gone. Time to go adventuring again,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's because the world is supposed to be harsh and dangerous, and so adventurers live for today. They don't like, plot out. They don't have like a 5-year plan. Like, once I get to level 10, I'm gonna have a fortress, right? So I have all this gold earmarked, and I need like a, plate armor and stuff. Same thing with like equipment. It's just like, just give them what they want. Like, just whatever makes sense for their character. Like, who cares? Just give them the things, right? Their abilities. The characters are not dangerous because of the equipment that they have. The equipment is dangerous because of the players, and the players should be formidable. And I've just always really liked that sort of world much more than the alternative. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. Still a little skeptical if the theater of the mind thing is going to work as well, especially with someone like Patrick and Cody who are just very tactical. They're very tactical in the way that they think about a battle, and it's not a tactical game; it's a cinematic game. And so, I think I might have to kind of whip out some of those habits. Cody's a little more of an experienced gamer, and I think he'll roll with the punches a little bit better. Patrick might take some adjustment, but if you and Cody kind of eat the purple berries first, I think he'll get into the spirit of it pretty quickly.
I
So,
think so. Speaking of when you just brought up characters, creating their own like keep down the line.
mhm.
A little bit of news that I wanted to put out there for everyone that wants to know. The 2024 SRD for the new 2024 rules of Dungeons and Dragons is out. And the only thing that people have bitched is that the Bastion rules are not in the SRD. There are no SRD foreshortened rules for Bastions, and they really wanted that, I guess, uh, because
Peculiar. They
Bastions
made a
are,
big to do about it. They like released it like and said they were going to do that, and
yeah,
then
and people do. They want to know these Bastion rules because I love the Bastion rules. Uh, I like it when there's mechanics for the characters' hideouts or home bases, headquarters, whatever you want to call it.
mhm.
I really like those. You don't have to because first of all, you don't have to use them. I like it better when you don't have to. I like it when it's like a side thing that you can use it for.
Like a side
Perhaps,
piece.
yeah. You have your little HQ here where your character has a lab, and
Yeah.
because you have this lab, you get a +1 to certain knowledge checks or
Mhm.
skill checks. I really enjoy that sort of stuff, and I went over the Bastion rules once since uh, the Dungeon Master Guide came out and the Player's Handbook. And there's some things in there that I think are cool, but I don't think I'd really went in too hard. And I was looking forward to the SRD coming out with some of the Bastion rules, and it's not. So I don't want to buy the book, but I do want to read up on some of these Bastion rules.
Is isn't it Bastion? It's not Bastion, is it? Like there's no H in
Listen
there.
here, you motherfucker.
No, no,
Bastion.
I'm literally asking you. I don't
No.
know.
Yeah,
I see
you are
that word.
correct. You are
I've
correct.
I've read that word, but I hardly ever say it.
Because is it BASTIAN or
O-N.
TION? It
Yeah,
is ON. I
it's
think that's why a
Bastion.
lot of people, and that's why I call Bastion, because it's just got that shun on the end there.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
words end that way, and they kind
But
of
I
have
think
like
you
a.
are correct. I think Bastion is
But
the
that's
actual
harder to say. It doesn't roll off the tongue as well. It just
Yeah, but
hits
I think that's like the
They could
correct.
just say fortress, right?
Yeah. You
Speaking
could
of
just
which,
say home.
right? Speaking of which, though, you ever notice that because if it was a bad guy's place,
That's a
you'd
layer.
call it a layer.
Hmm.
So why don't good guys ever have layers?
I
It's
don't know.
it's
That's a good
only
question.
villains have layers. Like,
I know it's kind of like a Castle Grayskull. Castle Grayskull looks evil as fuck,
yeah,
but it's but nobody would ever call it He-Man's lair.
no, villains have layers. I don't
Yeah,
understand why.
yeah. I don't know. That's the only real news that I wanted to bring up before we get into this email for this week. SRD's out. Everybody go out there. If you have been looking forward to reading the rules and seeing what's changed, go for it. Hey, fuck it. Email us. Let us know what you think of the changes if you don't know of any of the changes. If you're somehow been under a rock for the last year and haven't seen any of the changes that have come up. But of course, with the official SRD out, now you can go out there and check it out. I want to get into this email from maybe a new listener, and this is one of you guys that just has a different email. This one comes from the Gooseman
Yeah.
with the title, the subject line, "How to Introduce the Main Villain." Hey, fellas,
Hey.
I am starting a new campaign, and I'm having trouble coming up with the best way to introduce the main villain. To be brief, the plan is to have the first 3 or so sessions be the party exploring/adventuring around the starting town and helping the townsfolk to give them time to become attached to the town and the world.
Mm-hmm.
The main villain I want to introduce at this point is a lich that was sealed away long ago. The idea for them releasing the lich is based off the first Mummy movie. Yeah, I know, that mummy movie. The ones where they go exploring into a dungeon and open something that they shouldn't. Bada bing, bada boom, mummy.
I'll I'll interrupt just to say I love the first Mummy movie. Actually,
Yeah.
I think it's a fun kind of like pulpy movie that. I mean, yeah, the special effects and everything don't hold up so well, but I think it's fun. It
Hmm.
doesn't take itself too seriously. It just kind of feels like those old, pulpy.
Yeah, like you
Um,
said, it's a good pulpy movie. That's all it
yeah, it's
is.
good, and I
Yeah,
think the characters are well developed. The
it's
dynamics
fun.
between them are fun.
Yeah, so there you go, Goose Man. We're on your back. We got your back. Mummy movie, not bad.
There's dramatic stakes. There's some humor in there. I think it's pretty solid.
The question is in two parts.
Okay.
How could I make this work so that it doesn't feel too railroaded or like these low level players were meant to fail, as there's no way they could defeat a lich at low level, much like your guys'
Hmm.
Red Woman. The goal is to
Yeah.
give them a show of how powerful the lich is as a threat, to work towards finding and defeating him later on through the adventure. The second half of the question is what would another way to achieve something similar be if this seems too fragile to work or too narratively restricting to player agency?
Wow. They don't sign the email. We don't know his name. What's the emailer's name?
Uh, the Goose Man.
The Goose Man. All right.
Yep.
All right, Goose Man. Um, maybe that's a Top Gun reference. I don't know.
I
Um,
hope so. I really do.
First of all, I guess I'll say that I don't believe it would be too railroady. Um,
Mm-mm.
and his instincts are somewhat on um, that as to how best to incorporate a villain that's supposed to be the end bad into early levels. Now, obviously, you don't necessarily want your players to feel like any given encounter is hopeless. Um, so that's probably a good instinct. Um, but technically, you could say any plot hook is railroading the players. Like, well,
Mm.
there are these entry points into an adventure. If the players don't avail themselves to one of these entry points, then it's hard to kick off the adventure.
Right. I read this awesome thing yesterday, on one of the forums that I usually go to, that said, and it made me think of the Red Woman fight, the first one that we had,
Hmm.
because the person asked, it was just like, hey, is my big bad not killing them railroading them, or is it a sign of mercy? And there was a big discussion about, if the big bad would technically, if you knew them and you were just like, yeah, they're a murderous son of a bitch, but for some reason they left us alive, is that railroading your party?
It's, I mean, you have to have a good reason.
Mm.
Um, and so that kind of gets into some of the better techniques, I guess, for establishing a good character intro for a villain or any sort of major
Mm.
character. Um, and he touched on some of those already. Um, and I would suspect that if he's careful about introducing the villain in some ways that are um, more narratively significant, that the players actually won't really consider whether they're being railroaded. So,
Mm.
what you need to first do is establish some sort of connection to the campaign, or actually, a better way to say it would be a connection to the PCs and the villain. So, that's likely going to evoke some sort of emotion from the PCs, um, fear or dread or hatred, because villains stir in us negative emotions. But you also might want to try to give the PCs at least a little bit of an idea of what the villain's motivation is. There also might be some envy in there where the PCs are envious of the villain, likely because they have a lot of clout, a lot of power.
Mm.
So that's a pretty good place to start. Um, be careful with hinting too much at the motivation though, because one of the bigger pillars of a character introduction, and especially for a villain, is that there probably should be some sort of mystery to them. Um, Mystery drives the plot forward because it provokes in the players curiosity to learn more. And if the villain is a threat, and I'll get to that in a second, um, then they have a lot of motivation to be curious because they need to unravel the villain's plot. And so and he the writer already alluded to that he wants to kind of show some things in concrete ways.
Mm,
That's good. Ideally, you would be showing the power that the villain wields, and whether that comes off as cheap, as if they're fighting the PCs in some way, and the PCs manage to get come away alive, then you need a really good reason why the villain would leave them alive. Because if they're a threat, then he would likely just do away with them.
mm,
And it's really cheap to have them to pull punches. We did an episode on villains a long while back at now, but you don't want to neuter your villain. It's one of the worst things you can do, which is to make them seem ineffectual. You want to make them seem terrifying, and making them mysterious, hinting at the power that they wield and the ways in which it affects the world in concrete ways is a good way to do that. But don't put your characters on the same playing field as the villain if they can't. One, if the villain's just going to kind of cheaply allow them to live for the sake of the plot, or two, they're not at least acutely aware that they need to run away at some point.
mm.
It is a delicate balance to communicate to players that they are not likely going to be able to succeed in a fight, because then it just challenges the whole notion of why they're endeavoring to even get involved in the fight. Why bother? You can't kill this enemy, then why bother fighting them now? But there are some other ways to incorporate your villain into the story, without having some sort of direct battle with them. Ideally, you do want a character intro to have some conflict, and throwing them in the midst of a battle with that character is a good way to do that. But you can also show their machinations in other ways, how far their reach is. Again, I'll point to The Usual Suspects if you've never seen that movie. We don't ever see Kaiser Soze do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Not really, but his presence is felt all over the plot, and there's all sorts of mystery around him and intrigue, and you see his machinations in the world, uh, allowing the villain to kind of remain mysterious, and thinking of concrete ways that you can illustrate in this case, Lich's influence in specific ways that come out through the plot is smart. Try to give, if you are going to have it be like the character is introduced coming into a scene or something, try to think how you can make that stylish in some way. The character's appearance, their speech pattern, their overall demeanor, the more stylish it can be, the better that it likely is. And make sure that their intro is in some way meaningful to the plot. Like, try to choose a moment where it raises the stakes and kind of takes the plot in a different direction. If it raises the stakes and it's kind of a plot twist that kicks off the campaign in a new direction, then you need to make sure that the PCs are aware of that. So when that will happen is how much runway the PCs need is probably pretty good. If you do it too early, then they'll just be very obvious that it's going to feel too cinematic, like they're being taken for a ride, which I think is his worry. But it should foreshadow some things that are going to happen in the plot. And if you want to say that that's railroading the PCs, like, I mean, I guess that's fine. I don't really see it that way, but in order to foreshadow, you kind of have to have an idea of where the plot is going. Make
Mm-hmm.
no bones about it. D&D is not like a full sandbox player-driven experience. It just isn't. Anything to jump in with here so far, Matt?
No, I want to. I'm gonna jump in when we get to more of like the actual reveal,
Mm-hmm.
and how the reveal is gonna work. I thought you were gonna go ahead and bring in more of the early story elements and a little bit more about the villain. but I'll jump
Yeah.
in as soon as you're done there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess, a few cautions on things to avoid, which would be like, you need to make sure that the PCs know that this is the big bad of the campaign. And you can do that by a variety of different expositional methods. So just be aware that, like, if the PCs see the influence of the villain in negative ways, then that communicates something. But characters, if you if you're having characters speak about the villain, then there's knowledge of the villain,
Mhm.
and that might create some sort of sense of dread if characters speak about the villain in a very terrifying way that communicates that the players are going to come up against some real hardship when they finally face the villain. But that also kills the mystery a little bit, right? Like, so you just want to show enough of a sliver of the villain's reach and um and the villain's reach and capabilities to get the players intrigued. And this is usually the reason that it, I mean, anything that kills the mystique tends to bore players anyway, right?
Mhm.
So introducing a character that just where they get up and they have like this really long-winded soliloquy about them or other characters or just talking about them at length. And it's just like you're just sitting there with like an info dump. It's really boring, right? So, but so that's a delicate balance that you can only determine based on what suits the overall plot of the campaign
Mhm.
and where it slots in. This is the reason that in D&D there tends to be kind of a layered approach for mystery, right? The big evil characters that are super intelligent and have their hands in like every pie don't often reveal themselves right away. That would be a threat to them. And so what they do is they employ other monsters, they employ other lieutenants to kind of do their bidding. And so the PCs often kind of peel the onion and they go, "Oh, we defeated this guy that we thought was, maybe that guy's the big bad of the adventure."
Mhm.
And then you come to find out, well, like actually he's working for someone else, and you allude to that. And that is typically the way you establish mystery and dread without actually showing the the villain too early because yeah, if the PCs are going to just encounter the big bad like right out of the gate of the campaign, like a, level 20 villain or whatever, like that's not that's not likely to give them a sense that they can succeed and they will feel railroaded. Um, sorry.
Shut up.
All right. Okay. Uh, I guess I'll just pause there, and then so that hopefully, but I don't know. Do you? I would have to know kind of a little more beat by beat what they intend to do. I don't
Mhm.
really. I gotta be honest. I don't remember the exact plot of the Mummy super well.
Yeah.
So
The only thing that he was really saying is, or that they were really saying is that they just wanted it to be that they walked into like an ancient tomb,
mhm,
you know, undid something that they shouldn't have done, opened
right.
something that they shouldn't have opened, and then all of a sudden this lich is now let loose again onto the world.
But there's probably some ways to do that without it leading to a direct confrontation with the Lich.
Uh huh. Oh yeah,
Um,
sure. Well, even I had the idea of one, uh, because how they wrote beforehand, talking about how they don't want to do like, or they do want to try to bring in a very high level enemy at the very beginning, but they don't want the just to kind of scare the players. I've done that in the past, and it's been kind of cool. First time I did it was back in third edition, with my buddy Nate Higley, that actually had the great idea. What if we just, had a dragon fly overhead of them at level 1 and see what they would do? And it didn't do anything. It just did a flyby. It just did a flyby and then went back off towards the mountains.
yeah.
And but everybody that was playing was like, a fucking dragon. Just we're level 1 and a blue dragon flew over the top of us. What
Yeah.
the fuck is that? And they started talking to each other like, what the fuck is going on? What is happening? This isn't right. We're level 1. Why is a dragon here? And it was kind of a mix between, it was this awesome mix that I had. It was like their actual characters talking to themselves as well as the players trying to figure out what we were doing by having a blue dragon show up at level 1,
Well,
fly
they got to
over the
fly
head of them.
somewhere. You know,
Yeah.
there's all sorts of people like under where they're going. And it's just, you're not enough to get their attention
And I
necessarily.
remember when we did that, I told you about this. This was back in like 1997 or some shit, 1996. And
Yeah.
I told David about this. And because this is like when this is like the very beginning of my GMing career, the 10 year that I've been doing it.
Tenure.
And even David was like, yeah, that's actually kind of cool because they just know that, dude, there are dragons around here. They're not just always in a cave. That sometimes they do just kind of pop out every now and then.
Here be dragons.
Yeah, here be dragons.
Well, because players are so primed to think that anything that you show them is going to be significant.
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense that they would be all neurotic or whatever about it because, you know, they go, well, why is he showing us a dragon if we're not going to encounter a dragon? And so, but I think there's probably some clever ways for him to release the lich without it like necessarily materializing.
Oh, sure. I have a couple ideas as well because I was thinking about it. Having them maybe come out at not full power, if that's what he wants, is for them to kind of meet at the beginning of the campaign, and then Big Bad Ascan's off to somewhere into the distance to be not seen again until the far future. So maybe he comes out and he's more of just like a demi-lich sort of thing, where he's just a skull, or maybe just a bit of, like left arm is gone, this part of his leg is gone. And still the players show up and they realize that they let this thing out and they're like, oh man, we better deal with this. And he just waves his hand and they all fly off and hit the wall. And he looks down at his hand and, it's just like, oh, time hasn't really treated my powers well. That would normally kill, yada, yada amount of people. And then he goes off and creates a portal and walks out and they realize what they've done. That kind of gives a cool idea without you trying to say that this level 20 that has been sealed up for, who knows how long. But because of this, his power level, he can't cast more than a level 1 spell,
Yeah.
so to say.
Yeah, I mean they do this all the time. They're called reduced threat monsters, right? Where it's like they only have a certain amount of hit points and they don't have like all their spells available to them. But that is probably it's just kind of, we get too hemmed in by thinking about things mechanically. Just think about this as like a narrative device. The players go and they do something, especially if you can add some sort of twist where it's like they think they're doing one thing, and as it turns out, they're releasing this lich. You don't even need to have the lich like materialize. It could just be like they're just aware that like something comes, some black smoke just kind of like comes out and coalesces into this vague skull-like shape or something, and then it just kind of like floats out of the fucking dungeon. Just think about it in terms of like a scene in a movie rather than trying to think about it in terms of concrete statistics. It's probably better to create mystery if you actually don't have there be any initial fight or conflict. So the players just go like, whoa, what did we just fucking do? Some horrible this thing is just out in the world now. Like it didn't even bother with us. It didn't even seem to think that we were a threat. It just kind of got out. I'm a big fan of doing this with magic items, like artifacts especially. Like, can you tell me, I'm trying to remember, Matt, what was the artifact in the Darkness Poisoning the Land fucking campaign?
The Rod of Seven Parts.
No, but it wasn't, because it was a story item that like it was a story item. It didn't have like concrete statistics. It was just like, it was whatever, though, the guy that I called the Warlord. Remember him? He was the
And he
Warlord.
wanted, because there was something that had to do with the Rod of Seven Parts that went towards a dragon key. of some sort.
I don't really remember, but I just remember that there was no statistics for the item.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the item does X, Y, or Z as a daily power
Mm.
and has X amount of charges. It was like, no, like if you just have this thing, you're powerful. Like, and it's like the One Ring. Like, what does the One Ring do? It's like, well, I mean, it makes you invisible, but why is it powerful? It's like, well,
Right.
it's fucking who cares why it's
It's the
powerful?
one to rule them all, but
Right. It's
rule who? Them all.
them all. It's a MacGuffin, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, don't necessarily get tied to, yes, if something is like a permanent fixture in the player's inventory, then it needs to have statistics. But um, beyond that, it's not really important. In the same way that the villain, you might not even necessarily need to communicate to them that it is a lich, just that it's some
Yeah.
sort of ancient undead evil that's been unleashed, and now it is off in the world, and now their goal is to kind of figure out what its machinations are and track it down. And so that is like, what was the second part of the question? Like, if that's too fragile, like, how do I?
The second half of the question is, what would another way to achieve something similar be, if this seems too fragile to work or too narratively restricting to the player's agency?
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's kind of. I was just making sure that I had kind of touched on every portion of the question. I don't think it's too narratively restricting. Um, but when you limit player agency, then yes, that's not good.
Mm.
But I think that the important thing to remember is that most players don't mind, at least from my experience. They don't mind you having some sort of cinematic story thing that just kind of kicks off and happens, as long as they just don't feel like too much of that is in the plot, right? They have an adventure and they're, dungeon crawling and they're adventuring and they're doing this and they're doing that and they're whatever, then having something that happens that's just like, oh, like, this villain comes out and he absconds or whatever, it's in a narrative cinematic sense, it's not a big deal, especially if it's foreshadowing greater mystery and greater plot intrigue to future events. So
Mm.
now they have a purpose in front of them. Um, if you pull that lever too much throughout the course of the adventure, they will get frustrated. But it doesn't sound like that's really what he has in mind, so much as he's worried that an encounter with such a powerful villain would make the players feel hopeless, and that they would feel railroaded into a particular set of actions. And would suggest that if you handle it properly and don't really think about it in the terms of like some sort of confrontation with a big bad, you can play with the player's expectations a little bit by giving them some notion that they're going to do one thing, or maybe they are going to get like some sort of confrontation, and then you have just some narrative scene where this thing happens and this ancient evil escapes. Um, then you end the adventure there, like just like slam to black, right?
Mm.
Don't do any post-mortem of the players like dealing with it, or do like them getting out of the dungeon, going back to town as like an epilogue. Just cut when that happens. Leave them like going like, oh shit, what just happened? And then just go like, okay, that's a good place to end for tonight, and we'll just kind of come back and then just pick up with the next adventure like days later when they're back in civilization after they have some time to process like what's going on. They'll feel mystery and intrigue and they'll regroup. Um, and I don't think they'll feel railroaded if they've had enough options and autonomy, and you just kind of pulled the rug out from under them a little bit and you said like, no, no, it's going to be this kind of campaign, and this thing is down the road. Then you foreshadowed with a little bit of mystery, and most players don't mind that unless
Mm.
you have a lot of power gamey kind of like crunchy
Yeah.
players. But
That's what I'm always afraid of when this. I've never done it myself. I've been a part of it, especially right now with our campaign with the Red Woman. We
hmm
dealt with this, but I've never done this. I've pulled out powerful NPCs. I'm not gonna say
Mhm.
big bads, or even just enemies. Uh, but like, the first time that they're level 1 and they go to the tavern, they might meet a level 18, character at the tavern, another adventure that's going through town. But I've never done it with a bad guy
Mhm.
right up front, so that they know who it is. I've done it where I've held the identity of the big bad. In my very successful fourth edition campaign that I had that went to max level, the big bad evil guy was Zastam, and
Mhm.
I had him building up since level 1 all the way up, and I put just little hints into it, which then went into one of the best adventures I ever made, where the characters were taken and shot through time, quantum leap style, because they go into bodies of other people and they get to play different characters for a little while.
Mm.
They all got to make new characters of their classes that these characters that they jumped into was, and they had fun.
Word.
They got to learn the story of Zastam, where he came from, and how he got his power and what he does. They just played through this and learned all this stuff, and it was really good. The progression is what was really fun. Everybody had a lot of fun progressing to realize who the big bad evil was at this point, and then after that, we found out who he was. Now we're going to learn more about him and find out a way to defeat him. So I don't know. This early on, though, showing him how powerful he is and who he is right away, even with you, David, we don't know who the Red Woman actually was, if it is
Yeah.
even the same one. So, how do you feel about them kind of just introducing right off the bat like that, if they want it to be this big, powerful being?
The thing is I I'm with you that you need to introduce that the character is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But this kind of gets into the whole like, the old adage is always like show don't tell. Okay, sure. Showing is much stronger than telling someone
Mm-hmm.
something, but they both have their place. And it's important to know when telling is okay for purposes of expediency. And in this particular situation, we need to know that the villain is powerful. But if you show how they are powerful, one, it creates a situation where it could be a detriment to the PCs, and then you got to kind of paint yourself out of that corner to hand wave away why they're not dead. But it also kind of kills some of the intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
If the players release this evil and one, they have a clear sense that it is an incredibly powerful evil, that it is out in the world and is likely to wreak havoc, we don't need to see the Lich casting a ninth level spell on the party,
Mm-hmm.
especially because that would likely just kill the entirety of the party. So it's probably better to leave it on like a cliffhanger that forecasts where the rest of the campaign is going. So you need to make sure that the PCs do know that it's formidable, and that it raises the stakes of the campaign, and but also leaves enough mystery in the ways in which it does that, because a villain who does everything out in the open is typically a pretty bad villain and doesn't stay villaining for very long.
Mm-hmm.
And a lich is the pristine version of that. They're super duper smart, right? Um, and super duper smart characters don't expose their plots because their plots don't work if they're exposed. So you let it be known that that's a thing out in the world, and then you figure out ways in subsequent adventures to allude to the influence of, a nefarious puppet master that is infiltrating probably seemingly unrelated events. You could end this adventure with this kind of cinematic release of this, you know, this ethereal, otherworldly undead, and the PCs are just kind of sitting there with their jaws on the ground. And you could just pick up an adventure like a month later or like a week later, where the party is doing an adventure that's seemingly completely unrelated, but it will stay in the back of their mind that that's a thing that they let out. Then what you do is at the end of the next adventure, the seemingly unrelated thing, you just relate it back and allude to the players that this is the thing that they did in the first adventure is connected. And you just keep doing that throughout, and you make the clues and the breadcrumbs more and more prominent. So railroading is only a problem if the players feel pushed from behind, right? If the players feel like you're nudging them from behind to walk down a hallway, then they don't like being railroaded, because they're like, okay, you're nudging me from behind. There's a cool breeze swipes behind you and pushes, nudges you forward. But if you create a scenario where there's in a railroady kind of visual manifestation, you have a hallway, and the players can only go down the hallway, and there's literally something chasing them behind, and so they're being pushed from behind to go down the hallway. But if you create enough intrigue where the door is slightly ajar, there's a weird noise coming from, and what that does is it's a trail of breadcrumbs that gets them to go down the hallway. Most players don't mind that as much, and so try to think of the way you can structure your adventures like that, in a way that yeah, maybe technically in a there's only like this narrow set of parameters that the PCs can go down, but rather than nudging them toward it, try to think of on the other side how you can lure them toward it. The smell of a baking pie or something. It's like it's a trail of breadcrumbs. They're going to follow it because they're intrigued, and they won't mind that it only goes in one direction. At least the players that I've had don't seem to mind that. If you hide the brushstrokes well enough that the players don't feel manipulated and foisted upon them, it's okay to have the plot go in a one direction, especially on like a macro scale. Like on a more micro scale, yeah, they don't want room 1 leads to room 2, leads to room 3, leads to room 4, leads to room 5, but there needs to be some flexibility and exploration. But if just adventure 1 leads to this adventure, like you're building a story. Unless you're going to have just a totally episodic campaign, that is the way you build plot tension, by having things that are more or less determined. But if you provide enough intrigue and enough variety of ways to get there, then I wouldn't worry so much about whether it's railroading.
All right, I think that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. Oh fuck! I already closed the Gooseman. If you could hit us back, let us know what you think. Anybody out there that's ever asked us a question, or if you just want to say anything to us and tell us that we're doing great or we could be doing better, send it to insidethegmstudio@gmail.com and let us know. I would love to hear some reactions from you guys, especially for those that asked for advice. Did it work? Who knows? Or you can come and watch us live every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/InsideTheGM Studio. But for this week, for Inside the GM Studio, I've been your host, Matt.
And I am David.
A good night.